Honorable members of the Portfolio Committee, our team from the Parliament that supports this Portfolio Committee, all those that are watching our Portfolio Committee in the Parliamentary TV, those that are part of our committee today, if there are any members from the department that are here with us, greeting to you all. Just a reminder, honorable members, this day, 10th of May, will always be part of our history because it is the day that the first democratically elected by all those that live in South Africa through their political parties was sworn in as a president. Indate utata wethu President Nelson Mandela, 10th May 1994. It is a day that will always be there on our minds. It is a day that we need to tell our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, that on this day, we saw the dawn of the democracy in South Africa. We are here as members because of that man who spent half of his life in prison for the freedom of this country. He was not the only one. Some died on the trenches fighting for this freedom. We must never take this freedom for granted. And we must always remind our children, our great-grandchildren, that we should never go back to where the country was before 1994, where only a few that would rule this country would take decisions about the laws that was ruling this country. We have heard, all of us, that apartheid was one of the worst form of ruling the people. We must never go back there. So I felt that today I must remind all of you that we have that day in our history. If it is not there in the books of history, it means we need to tell our children, our great-children, our grandchildren that history. Honorable members, today we are going to deal with the report of the oversight visit to Small Harbours in Western Cape that we did in the last few weeks, in which we visited a number of small harbours, especially in the Western Cape, not all proclaimed and unproclaimed, as part of a function that is there in the department. As we know that the owner of all the properties of government is none other than Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. But we also know that the responsibility of Small Harbours, it's not only the responsibility of Public Works, there are also departments that are sharing the responsibility. For example, your Department of Forest, Fisheries and Environmental Affairs, your Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, when you talk of Robben Island, your Department of Tourism, that we felt that it also needs to be brought in when we saw some of the harbors, the way they are. So it means that there is a lot of integration and a lot of work that has to be done. But in those few words, honorable members, I am welcoming you in this committee, hoping that we'll deliberate, as we always do, progressively, to ensure that those harbors, they are kept the way they are, those that are in a good state, and those that are not in a good state, we, as this portfolio committee, we will take decisions and recommendations for the department to follow that up. But I must not forget to acknowledge that after our visit, the minister also visited. I am sure the departmental officials that were with us, they informed him of what we have seen, and there is a commitment that the minister made on the amount of funds that are going to be used to ensure that some of these harbors are maintained and refurbished. But that we saw it on the news, hoping that when we deal with this, with the department in place, the minister will make that commitment to us. Honorable members, you are all welcomed. Lwazi, do we have any apologies other than the apology of Honorable Mashele, who, as I indicated last week, that he is not going to be with us this week and last week, but next week he will join us and participate in all our activities. Do we have any apology other than the one of Honorable Mashele?
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, honorable members. I have only two apologies, Chairperson, from Honorable Van Staden and Honorable Tring. That's the only two apologies that I have, Honorable Chair.
Thank you so much, Lwazi. We then note those two apologies. Can we then ask, I don't know whether it's going to be Shuaib who is going to present the report for us.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, members. Good morning, colleagues. Chairperson, I just want to make certain that the screen is visible.
Yes, yes, Mr. Denson, the screen is visible.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, we have the report in front of us. This report was completed rapidly. We normally have an 8-day period to complete it, but we completed it faster so that members could have it in front of them and peruse it prior to this meeting. But I just want to say that I've noticed that the notes from our researcher also was sent. And so if there's any additions that members noted between the two, both the notes of the researcher as well as the report, then in this meeting we can make a decision as a committee as to which must be added and which not. Really, it is your report that you are considering. So I will guide members through this because what we also did was to do some analytic work on what we saw. And as staff, of course, we've done this previously. And so what you are actually getting is not only what we've noticed in the visit itself, but also a sort of comparative glance as to whether there has been improvement and whether things are as they have been shown to us. Chairperson, we visited from 18 to 21 April 2023. We went to the West Coast and the Cape Town coast and Robben Island. Those are small harbours on the Cape West Coast, Cape Town coast and Robben Island. I made a correction on Cape West Coast because there is a tendency to refer to Cape West Coast as a name, while in the case of that first sentence there, it is just describing the geographical coast, and therefore it should not be a W and a C that is capital. Chairperson, the members' attendance, the one difference there is that Honorable Suisa decided not to be with us. I'm just pulling your leg, Honorable Member. And we were then joined by Honorable Mokgoto of the EFF. And then we had our committee support. We had added support in the sense that the communications officer, Faith Ndenze, was joined by excellent media people, Ms. Kumalo, I think it was Mr. Chomela, I'm not certain, it says Miss Chomela there, and Mr. Costile, who always added those excellent photographs to us of every single day. Now, the visits always means that we are doing oversight also over how this Department of Public Works and Infrastructure collaboratively with the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, in the case of Robben Island Museum, also the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, but also how the district municipalities and local municipalities, community leaders, board members and officials of the Robben Island Museum, in the case of that Robben Island Murray port, how they do the work collaboratively. In the case of Sports, Arts and Culture and Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, those are two client departments that our department should assist. And as the report unfolds, we will reflect on how that collaborative work takes place. As already said, refer to Honorable Mogoto replacing Honorable Siwisa. In the case of the executive, we did not have the executive of any of these departments with us, although, as the chairperson already said earlier on in the introduction, we note that the minister also visited these harbours after our visit, and we also note the amount that he referred to, but there is a rider to that I will refer to later on when it comes to the 501 million rand that was quote unquote announced. We need to just also reflect, Chairperson, on something that we note, and this is one of the analytic comments that I referred to earlier on. The importance of community involvement and active democratic citizenry and social agency. In other words, that our people are not just passive. They are active citizens that bring with them knowledge from the ground. And that knowledge from the ground is very enriched. It is the type of knowledge of active citizens that assists us, yourselves, as democratic representatives, to do your work better. And we've seen the absence in some small harbours of this type of active citizenry, and the presence in others. And we reflect here on Saldanha Bay, Kalk Bay, Gordons Bay, and how the deliberations of our committee received the input of these people. I mean, received the input, their input, and it assisted us as a committee to understand the issues related to employment creation, education, and skills development and social development much better. Some of the community members at these harbours actively participated. They joined our meeting, they joined our walks into the harbours, not in the case of Hout Bay, of course, and that is where we are talking about what I refer to as a delinking of citizens, community members from government activities, where government facilities exist. Once communities feel they're not part of it, instead of providing a positive input in a democratic way, what happens is that it's a negative activity that these social agents, these community members are then engaging in. And in the case of Hout Bay, it's in the case, what happens is we've seen the literal destruction of harbour infrastructure and the use of it through very antisocial and undemocratic behaviors that threatens our democracy, but also in the long term threatens their own existence, as they do not use the harbour as their own, but sees seemingly the harbour and all authority as enemies rather than as partners in this democracy through which jobs can be created and their lives can be improved. So we visited Saldanha Bay, Eiserfontein on the west coast, Cape West Coast. And on the Cape Town coast, we visited Hout Bay, Kalk Bay, and Gordons Bay, and then we visited Murray Harbour and the Robben Island Museum. The aim was to gain insight into whether and how the DPWI as a department and the property management trading entity managed and maintained small harbours along the coast through collaboration with the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment. And in the case of Robben Island Museum already, we said the board of Robben Island Museum that reports to the Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture. Now, these harbours hold properties that are leased to local, but sometimes also multinational businesses and fishing companies that hold long-term fishing rights. These people often use large storage facilities on the sites of the harbours, and they provide employment to the working class communities of the Cape West Coast. And in the case of Kalk Bay, Gordons Bay, all the small harbours, they provide access to the harbours for people to be busy with tourism activities as well, which is also a job creating opportunity then. But we did not look at Pepper Bay, but Pepper Bay also has other aqua marine activities that can be replicated in other harbours. Let me just say also that one of the things that this visit is also all about is the looking at these harbours and how they operate, what the challenges are, but also what the successes are, so that what happens here can be replicated elsewhere on other coastlines on the Eastern Cape, the KwaZulu-Natal, and the Northern Cape coastlines, where those small harbours should be developed so that rural communities can also benefit from the marine resources. Now, except for employment opportunities in the fishing factories and on the vessels, small harbours hold the promise of community members becoming small, medium and micro enterprise business owners in tourism and ecotourist activities, but also through Operation Pakisa, the type of fishing, farming, mussel farming, oyster farming, etc. The community learned, this community benefited from the legacy report of the previous committee, which is the Portfolio Committee on Public Works in the 5th Parliament, that fully proclaimed functional small fishing harbours has been skewed historically towards the Western Cape. In its oversight visit, the intent was therefore to learn whether and how what happened at these harbours in the Western Cape can be replicated, as I said, in the Northern Cape, Eastern Cape coastlines. The development of those coastlines have been neglected. Communities living on these coastlines, there are slipways very often, but they're not declared, similar to Eiserfontein. They're not proclaimed small harbours. They are merely slipways from which vessels can be launched. There's no real proper infrastructure to assist these people. In the case of Eiserfontein, even though we got the report that no, it's all fine, we provided a market outside of Eiserfontein for the community. We can tell you, members, that the movement out to the outside is actually not as innocent as it seemed. If you listen to the communities of Darling and Mamre and Malmesbury that use Eiserfontein, you'll hear that those people feel thrown away in the way that has been done. At the proclaimed small harbours on the West Coast and Cape Town coastline, we found that most of the government-owned properties were not fully utilised. They were neglected, and they often got vandalised by communities. And we referred to the literal destruction of those infrastructure that could be used, and was, by the way, used as storage facilities for businesses. They are now without roofs. Some of the bricks are taken off, and the harbour just looks horrible, in a real horrible state. This is leading to the loss of potential income. It leads to high costs of government to provide you need to spend extra money on security services. And we've seen the rapid response people there. And then, of course, the PMTE then struggles with you pay rates for things that's broken and cannot be used. And it's very unfortunate that we lose money in a double way like that. So local district and metropolitan municipalities where these harbors are situated depend on these rates, and you can't blame them for drawing the rates as revenue. But it must be the security and the maintenance of these harbors must be stepped up and done properly so that we don't lose waste. Municipalities with vast coastlines like Eastern Cape, Northern Cape, and KZN, obviously those municipalities situated on those coastlines are losing revenue if we do not develop them with proclaimed small harbors. So our visit to Robben Island Museum, prior to the oversight visit, the committee received numerous complaints regarding maintenance and management of government property within the heritage site, and the committee wanted to collect information to see for themselves so that those issues can be corrected. We just state the mandates and the functions of the committee here. Again, it's very similar to what we do in all our reports. And we reflect on the turnaround of 2011 to 2012 and the operationalization of the PMTE that we already in our budget vote report, members may recall, we said that it's not properly operationalized and this is causing problems. And I think some of the problems we see at Hout Bay is part of that. The mandate of the committee is stated here, and then again we state the purpose of the visit here. But just to say that we, as a committee, in our strategic plan, and right from the start, we said we would do this from the very first meeting that the researcher and myself engaged with members. We said to members that our work is on infrastructure, and therefore we visit project sites and we enter those project sites and we walk it. And what the chairperson also stated to the visitors and the community that joined us, as well as the departments that joined us, that we're not going to sit in a board meeting and listen to presentations first. We enter the site and we look at the site for ourselves first, prior to receiving presentations and briefings from departments, entities, or service providers that are contracted to work on these projects. In this case, it was DPWI, PMTE, and the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment. This is the method that we follow to allow us, our members and support staff, to have direct sight of challenges and engage with community members on the ground, and with where it's relevant, with construction, maintenance, and project workers and clients that lease harbor properties. We were curtailed at Kalk Bay, of course, because of the weather, and we could not do so. But even so, afterwards, there was engagement, and we did look at some of these work sites. And Mr. Costile, our official photographer, as well as our camera operators, actually went to these and took pictures as well as videos that they sent to us. Now, this walkabout, this is what we call a walking methodology, walking the site methodology, leads to community members and clients joining our actual meetings very often. And this allows for further enrichment of our deliberations, and the recommendations that we then make are more practical and it's problem solving oriented. Instead of just doing a tick box oversight, we actually do a walk the site method we follow, and we want to make recommendations that are practical, that are timed, and we often even revisit some of the sites to ensure that there's progress or not, and to check on that. So in Kalk Bay and Gordons Bay, as I said, due to unfavorable weather conditions, we could not do that. So we did the briefings first prior to on-site walking inspections, and where it did not take place, as I said, Mr. Costile and the camera operators assisted us. So on day one of the visit, Tuesday, 18 April, we went to Saldanha Harbour, and during the site inspection, I just want to fix the spaces that's incorrect here. During the site inspection walkabout, members of the committee asked questions, and some of the community members engaged us. Mr. Maxwell Moss, former MP, engaged us on some of these issues, as well as the operating officer of the Saldanha Sea Harvest Fisheries client that leases property for the fishing factory, also joined us, as well as some community members that were actually divers, as well as somebody who works in the constituency office. Chairperson, the discussions related to small harbours require recognition of what the committee knew before the visits. Now, these visits relate to what the department budgeted for in terms of infrastructure upgrades and security of the proclaimed harbours. We recall that in its preparation, this committee engaged with Public Works Department as well as the PMTE in meetings, as well as through questions that were stated, questions for written as well as for oral reply to the Minister on maintenance, security and other challenges at the 12, but DFE sees it as 13 proclaimed small harbours in the Western Cape. The footnote 3 lists these as Lambert's Bay, Laiplek / Berg River Harbour, St. Helena Bay, Saldanha Bay, Pepper Bay, Hout Bay, Kalk Bay, Gordons Bay, Hermanus, Gans Bay, Arnistis Bay, and Still Bay. Now, those others are on the south coast of Cape Town, of the Western Cape, and we did not visit them, and the others are further up from Saldanha that we, on this visit, did not visit. But in our previous visits we did, and members used that information as preparation. So our on-site visits and walkthroughs, the committee wants to put the information that we had prior to we visited next to, in other words, juxtapose all the information on budgeted items to gain a more complete and updated understanding of what's going on at these harbours. There's a full stop missing. And Chairperson and members, our 4 September, this committee's meeting, 4 September 2019, we'll recall, and Chairperson, this is just in relation to put into perspective the 501 million that was announced by the Minister on his visit after ours. The PMTE in 2019 reported to us on a 402 million that was made available for the scope of removing sunken vessels at the 12 proclaimed small harbours. The challenge was stated to us at that time that that was not enough money. And that is for the maintenance tasks such as dredging meaning where silt built up, which makes the depth of the water too low for some of the boats to enter. It threatens boats because it can actually sink, or it can run aground like that. So they dredge and they take that out. At Gordons Bay, we heard how Bikini Bay, that's right next to the harbour, actually gets enlarged by some of the soil and sludge and sand that's taken out through the dredging process. The repair and upgrades to slipways, we saw the improvements since the previous committee's visit at Saldanha Bay, as well as at Kalk Bay. There's also been clear improvements to some of the winges, as well as the actual slipways. And then especially also on shore crane replacements, we saw those 2 harbours. The security installations we can reflect on just now, and the apparatus, and then civil and electrical infrastructure repair. The amount was then, Chairperson, I see Honourable Mashele is visiting us in spite of his apology. Chairperson, the amount of 402 million that was budgeted in the 2018-19 financial year was then updated in the 2022-2023 budget vote speech. In other words, the previous year's budget vote speech. That amount of 501 million for the harbours was announced. And so the amount that the Minister referred to was not a new amount. It's an amount that was actually budgeted for, and I don't think the minister intended for it to be a new amount, but I must say it came across as this was a very quick solution, that the 501 million was then announced. It should not be looked at as that, as it is not a new amount. It's exactly what was budgeted for, and there's no extra money given for these repairs. Let me just say, Chair, the reason why, and members, the reason why we are talking of dredging repair and upgrades, and we list them, each one there, is that if you look at what dredging is, if you look at the cost involved in repair and upgrades to slipways, shore crane replacement, security installation apparatus, and civil and electrical infrastructure repairs, already the 402 million of 2019 was too little to get those tasks done. It was not enough. And 501 million is not enough. It might look like a lot of money, but it is not enough for 12 proclaimed small harbours and those specific tasks. Now, the Saldanha Bay Small Harbour, the estimated damage of about 45 million on the quay side is a problem. The leasing company Sea Harvest was saying to the committee that sea, what it would, quote unquote, is called the Sea Harvest quay side, is actually showing damage to such a degree that often they have to let boats offload in Mossel Bay or here in Cape Town at Vikings Fishing Company rootstock. Now, the amounts of money that they lose is substantial, and if you think that maintenance is causing your client that leases from you, your sole leasing client, to spend extra money for the offloading, my apologies, then we are talking about, then we can see what happens if the Government Immovable Asset Management Act is not fully implemented. We have said in our budget vote and our annual performance plans this year and every single year of the 5-year term of this parliamentary session, we've said to the department that when it comes to how you deal with clients, your user asset management and custodian asset management plans for each of these sites must be properly updated, and you must engage properly with the clients. And what we mean by that, that you then contract in such a way that you get the maximum amount of money through your leasing. But we cannot do this type of thing where we lease and the company starts maintaining. And years later, when you want to contract, the company then brings that as a bargaining point. And we heard that from that operating officer, that we've been managing and maintaining what you did not, and we spent so much money on it, and now we are wanting you to see that this is our bargaining chip, and therefore we want it for free or for less. And that's not correct, and we need to take cognizance of that, of what happens if we don't maintain properly. And I will continue maintaining that this shows what happens if the Government Immovable Asset Management Act is implemented, but very marginally implemented, not fully implemented. And we understand the PMTE does not have sufficient qualified contracting and property maintenance and management people, but it's time that, and we know how competitive the sector is in terms of personnel, but it is time that this department steps up on that. What is important, Chair, is the input of Mr. Moss. He did not speak on behalf of himself. He spoke on behalf of the whole community. And I noticed that he also spoke to the minister about this on the minister's meeting. That was after our meeting, after our visit. That the company Sea Harvest, that's been there for 63 years, it employs currently 2,000 people. on vessels and in the fishing processing production line on the harbor. But if that company is not there, every single one of those people are linked to a particular household. And you can see what might happen if these people are not there. And it is a very important aspect to keep in mind when we also think of Northern Cape, Eastern Cape, and KwaZulu-Natal, where people currently do not have much choice. They have to go to cities to work. If we develop our rural coastlines and we can actually have very well developed towns with businesses investing in those towns and staying there, but then our contracting with these people must be exemplary to such a degree that they can actually plan ahead, which is, Chair, why we as a committee must take a position on this month-to-month leases, much stronger position, and say to the minister that must come to an immediate end, and it must be done in such a way that businesses can plan ahead. Chair, we went into the winch room and we saw the improvement in terms of when we were there in 2017, only about 500-ton vessels could be winched onto the slipway and onto the cranes for repairs. Currently, it's bigger ships of 600 to 1,200 ton ships, and those are significantly, that's a significant improvement, which means these harbors, these boats no longer need to go to Cape Town Harbor or Mossel Bay, but they can come to Saldanha Bay. It's apparently the only small harbor with a capacity to serve large fishing vessels. In that way, you can draw other companies there to actually do the maintenance, and fisheries and forestry as a department can make more money. We must, however, note, Chair, the problem with Department of Forestry, Fishery and Environment, where their revenue management unit that's responsible for levies and regulations told us that the levies had not been updated for a number of years, and it's outdated. And this means that it is, again, because a department is not updating its contractual issues through regulations, the amount of money that you make for winching a vessel is not enough, and therefore we are actually robbing ourselves as a government in a case like this. They state that the last time there was an attempt to revise levies, there was rejection by fishing companies and boat owners, and a blanket approach is applied. So I think, Chairperson, again, the issue of social facilitation, which we will speak about again, we spoke about it in the budget vote report, that, or maybe in the APP and budget vote report, that it's time that government comes to a decision about social facilitation as a profession, because many times when we don't have it in place, things get out of control. The slipway office and closed circuit television room, this is the item, let me just go there quickly again, Chair, apologies for paging up and down. This is the security installation component of the 501 million rand, security installation and apparatus. And I said I would speak about it again, and this is 5.1.13. Chair, the office is one of the newly built buildings in the winch area, and it's a CCTV room inside the building, motion cameras, but there's a limitation as it can only pick up movements, only starts recording upon motion detection. Footage lasts for 3 months only, and there's no backup. So once the 3 months are over, whatever has been recorded is gone. The systems are only useful for security purposes and fit for, well, this is a comment that we make, an analytic comment. We're saying that these systems really are only relevant and impactful, fit for purpose, therefore, if it is secured, if it is monitored for 24 hours, if it is operated by properly trained staff, and if those staff's training is done according to security industry standards, and if they follow standard operating procedures according to which they monitor screens, according to which they archive and delete material, and according to which they record their own personal hourly movements when they are on duty. Chair, that's very important, because as we walked and we stood inside that TV, security TV, the CCTV room, we were told that there's no assigned trained security staff that operated the CCTV room. In other words, there's not even, we can't even consider the standards that I'm talking about. Because even if you have people that are assigned, you have to make certain that they are properly trained and they follow particularly important security standard according to how they connect with people from the outside, people who enter the harbor, so that we're talking here about they cannot be brought into illegal operations of illegal operators. Because that is what happens at all ports and harbors. We find across the world that what illegal operators do is they take somebody from the inside, especially around security apparatus, and they make them part of themselves by paying them off or threatening their family or some way of getting them into the illegal operations. And that is specifically what we were talking about. However, we find it's worse than what we thought. There's no assigned people there, and therefore the money that was spent on those CCTV systems cannot be said to have been spent effectively and efficiently. And I always speak about Section 217 of the Constitution, long before I go to the Public Finance Management Act, that 217 says that when government uses money, it must be spent effectively and efficiently, and there must be no wastage. And if it's not done like that, then we are busy with illegal expenditure. You cannot build something and it stands there and it is not useful. This is a serious thing that needs serious attention, so that those things that have been installed actually operate so that it can stop possible crime. Sunken vessels that hamper fishing operations. The committee found 2 sunken vessels in the harbor. I also saw a third one that was busy listing, which means water is it takes in water and it's going to sink in the next few months. The harbor master reported that they were submerged for a period of 2 to 3 years already. We heard from the harbor master that a notice was served to one of the owners, but the owner indicated that they were not in a position to recover the vessel because it's expensive. Now, Chair, we've noticed a trend when it comes to this, and I must step back a little bit here and just say the way in which things work is you have a boat, you tow the boat into a harbor. The harbor master, in my knowledge, as I bring my boat in, I know that I'm going to have to pay to moor my boat. When I moor the boat, I need to know what is the fee. I need to know how to get a certificate or a permit to moor my boat and for how long I'll do it. And I must know that my boat is secure. Now, the unfortunate thing is that because those regulations have not been updated, there is a tacit knowledge that what happens is, don't worry, it's just a low fee. And so it's not controlled. It's not well known. It's not properly established and inspected. And so what boat owners do is they moor, they pay a small fee, and they walk away. The boat starts taking in water and it sinks, and now the law comes in. the Marine Living Resources Act of 1998 is unclear about how a sunken vessel must be recovered. If a law is unclear of how something must be done, then the law needs to be amended. We noticed something here, Chair, that the department that officials, both DPWI and Forestry and Fishery and Environment, that government officials seems to operate as if law is made to stay exactly like it is, and regulations are made to stay exactly like it is. Yet, that is not true, Chair. And we know that as lawmakers, you know it, that the minister must be able to use that law to make regulation to ensure control over that area, or over those boats, or over the behavior of people on the harbors. And what we find here is that both these departments, they seem to treat the law and regulation as if it is something dead, as if it is something that should just be adhered to, rather than they should report these are the constraints of this particular law, of this particular regulation. It needs amendment, and you take it to your legal department or legal unit in your department. You draft those, you put it in front of the minister, and you make a proper argument for that to be done. And we find that there's far too much of an old, archaic way of working with law and regulation, as if it is against human beings rather than as if it is for human beings. So the asset disposal unit of Forestry, Fisheries, and Environment speaks as if they cannot at all remove vehicles because of that Marine Living Resources Act, because the owners are able to use the law to their advantage and the department cannot use the law properly. Dilapidated building that we found there in the harbour precinct, members questioned what the story was with this particular dilapidated building, and the department stated that they applied for demolition and the process was underway. That's our department itself. That is something that needs to be followed up on. We also noticed the abandoned restaurant. That restaurant was, apologies, that restaurant was in operation in 2017. We heard that it became abandoned, unused and abandoned during the 2020 COVID-19 economic lockdown. And the department indicated that it was going to advertise for a new tenant. I put there no time frames were given because that is a weakness. If we say something must be done with no time frames, then it's not going to be done soon enough. The boat store, a recently erected building that our department built, it houses freezers and is currently used to store abalone and crayfish that was recovered from convicted and incarcerated criminals and poachers. They were either arrested while poaching or found in illegal possession of these species. And after cases had been finalized, these specimens would be sold through a formal disposal process, and the proceeds goes to the Marine Living Resources Fund, which is an operational fund of the Department of Fisheries, Forestry, and Environment. We spoke about the security and the challenge in the light of no permanent trained staff at the TV room, and there's no physical security service provider in the harbour. In other words, there's nobody patrolling throughout the whole harbour, the whole geographical space that is demarcated as a harbour, and that is a problem. Skills development, certified training of locals on the winching and the dry docking. Forestry and Fisheries as a department states that they provide employment to local people and training to local people for that purpose. The department and forestry, what happened here? After the on-site walkthrough, my apologies, it should be and discussions. The committee then received the presentations, and the presentation of the department, our acting director, deputy director general, responsible for Small Harbours, led the presentation and highlighted areas that were identified for improvement. there was a focus on the sunken vessels, repairs to slipways, security upgrades, etc. The forestry department, fishing and forestry department, laid out section 27 of the Marine Living Resources Act, spoke of the 12 proclaimed fishing harbors at Lambert's Bay, etc., and the management of proclaimed small fishing harbors, how it manages human capacity, the 216 contract workers, and that the position of director proclaimed fishing harbors post is vacant, and it has been advertised and closed on 10 April. So we can expect that that person will be appointed soon. About repairs and maintenance, this department as a client, again, Chair, the 100,000 Rand per maintenance incident applies here. And once it's over that, the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure's PMTE comes in and does the maintenance. Now, here is the issue about user asset management plans that's drawn up with the department, and that they should timeously inform, according to the user asset management plan, the custodian department, which is Public Works, of repairs and maintenance and the estimated annual costs. Chair, there's a section on security where we're repeating what I just discussed, and the issue of the collection of revenue and the levies are far too low. This needs to be updated, and social facilitation must be part of that process. On the second day, when we went to Hout Bay, Chairperson, we first went to Eiserfontein Harbour, which is not really a harbour. It's not a proclaimed small harbour, but rather a slipway that gives access to the community to fish. The municipality contracts a service provider for the management of the harbour, which means the entry and exit and some security, and the amount of 19,000 rands per month, which adds to about 684,000 per year. And they speak of their tender process through which they appoint the person. The harbour is a crayfish harbour, runs from September to April. People from Darling, Laiplek, but I also needed to add Mamre and all those rural areas. They catch crayfish for tourists, but there's also touring around the harbour and up the coast with boats. That's possible, but that's not controlled properly currently. But in the future, that type of thing can happen. 420,000 Rand per fishing boat is collected annually, and during busy seasons, they do not allow light vehicles inside because priority is given to the boats and trailers. The fishing market on the other side of the town is considered as conducive for fishing production. 2 vendors who sell coffee and fishing materials operate at the harbour, and municipality manages the slipways on behalf of Public Works and Infrastructure, but there's no formal agreement in place. The department committed in this engagement to send a team of engineers to do a preliminary assessment, and would commission, if there's damage there, a project based on the assessment result. Another commitment was made was that an MOU would be finalized between the department and the municipality by the end of June this year. Briefings by the service provider, the municipality and the department. This is the issue of the 800,000, Chair, and the municipality was clear that they consider that written off and there's no real action needed on that 2017 legacy issue. When we visited Hout Bay, Chairperson, this is the one that stands out in terms of a lesson where social facilitation is crucial, but also in terms of active democratic citizenry, where people own infrastructure and cooperate with government rather than oppose government and authorities. We were accompanied by the Deputy Mayor of the City of Cape Town and a local councillor. who is a member of the mayoral council of the city, both on the walkthroughs as well as at the presentations, and both conceded that the harbour was, while it's pregnant with possibilities that could, through public-private partnerships, maximize economic activity and revenue generation, currently it is in a state where that's not really possible. It has to be secured, and work needs to be done to bring that community on board. The sea rescue area used for treatment of ailing seals is maintained by the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. Security is compromised, however, because vagrants destroy fencing. They damaged security features and took lights off, so it's highly insecure. In collaboration with SAPS, the PMTE conducted an assessment of the damage, and they pegged the damage at around 500,000. The sunken vessels, clearly members looked inside of one of these vessels, and we could see people inside, even though there's water inside there, and it looked as if they were using drugs. The department, both departments are very aware of this, and it is a serious problem. There's reference to an owner who could not be traced, who just left and moved to Holland without paying much for his vessel or removing the vessel. It is part of the reason why we say that, you know, if you think of dredging, you think of the security equipment, you think of fixing what is wrong in every single one of the 12 harbours, 501 million will not be enough. The harbour master also refers to the 30-day notice before the legal department takes over, and it just seems as if, you know, if the cost of removal of vehicle lies with the owner of the vessel, then those vessels are just going to be in that harbour, and every time you'll have to let it rot and it'll go to the bottom long before you can do anything about it. In this case, the law needs to be addressed, and the regulation needs to be addressed by the Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment. High rate of community criminality and security breaches. Chair, we experienced the security threats from alleged poachers who entered the harbours when we were there in the high-powered SUVs. They commanded the committee to switch off cameras so that they, and we are quoting them, could do their job properly. Members may recall the gentleman shouting at you, "Get out of the way, we want to go work, let me do my job properly." The harbour master was clearly traumatized. This is ongoing terror. She was the harbour master in 2017 when we were there. At that time, our office was totally destroyed. Toilet fittings were ripped out. This time it's repaired, but clearly the harbour master is traumatized. She's working in a very, very bad work environment, and it is something that is not good to see. We were there for a few hours in one day. She's there every single day, and she has to do her job on that harbour and cannot do it remotely, and which means that she gets abused like this all the time. Human trafficking, poaching, drug trade, rife in this harbour. Over time, it worsened. I can say, Chair, it was shocking to see what the harbour was like compared to 2017. It was in a state then already, but this was atrocious. The committee contracted, sorry, not the committee, the department contracted a tactical response security company to secure the entrance of the harbour and the harbour master's office, and that was the only reason why we were able to actually retreat to the harbour master's office and boardroom for our meeting. The harbour master speaks of the two surrounding communities who would often fight about activities that should take place at the harbour. Criminal elements leverage on this type of vacuum, no security, low security where there is, and clearly this harbour is an example of a government-owned property that has been invaded and taken over by the community in the worst possible way. This is untenable, it is incorrect, and it needs to be addressed both by security. We recall that prior to 2017, Department of Defense was used to deploy troops at the harbour to guard the ports, the small harbour at a particular stage, but it was recalled a couple of years ago for unknown reasons. There was a vandalized, dilapidated building on the far side of the harbour. Reportedly, it's housing drug lords, and they are busy with alleged human trafficking. The department stated that the window for proposals calling for investors in the harbour was opened, but I cannot foresee how one can open proposals for investors and the space is not secure for businesses. And I think that needs to be relooked at. First secure and then call for investors. The briefings are recalled here, Chair. I'm not going to go through it. We were all part of it. And it refers to local community loyalty through their own social investment. Chair, there is a reason for us to think that that community needs to be brought on board in the most positive way, away from their negative attitude, and brought on board to assist the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment to run this harbour. Harbours should not be run by governments alone. It should be run by business, the communities, as well as government, as in partnership. On the third day, we visited Kalk Bay. It was raining. We couldn't do our usual on-site walkthrough of the work sites. Members used the local restaurant and the leaseholder there as a venue. And we received briefings on infrastructural upgrades and structural damages and infrastructure requirements. And a member of a community gave us a good example of what is possible in a harbour like Hout Bay. If it can happen in Kalk Bay, it can happen in Hout Bay. The member of the community came forward, identified himself as a fifth generation Kalk Bay member. He's a member of the Harbour Management Forum, and he spoke of and laid out a plan in which the community wanted to put up a fishing and crayfish processing unit to create further work for its community. In the engagement with the harbour master also referred to how the community, how the harbour gets rented out to filming companies, and how the local community and hawkers and fish flecking operators actually make money from these types of activities. And this is an example, Chair, of how when communities come with a positive attitude of job creation and work creation, that the collaborative effort leads to a good example of how a local community, government and business can be busy working together to make things better. The leases, in the case of this Kalk Bay Harbour, there are 4 leases. 2 are active and the rest are on a month-to-month basis. The small temporary structure is a small lease management that's managed by the Department of Forestry and Fisheries and Environment on behalf of our department. We saw the fishing market. The harbour master spoke of harbour management through EPWP program that created employment for 13 beneficiaries, 8 females and 5 males, and spoke of the human resources that's required. Skills pool by taking EPWP participants and other locals through a specialized upskilling program from grade 10 to degree level, so they can be employable in the formal job sector in the future. And then the security that remains a challenge with criminal activities of poaching and robbery continuing as there's no visible security guards. DFFE committed that the bid committee would deal with supply chain processes in an attempt to curb criminal activities through tightening security systems at this harbour. Tourism we spoke about and the activities, but of course the issues of rates and levies for local and international entertainment businesses are the same. So that matter is important, including the matter of the community member requesting land that is close to the parking lot that belongs to the city, that they would want assistance from the Department of Public Works to get access to that land to use for a fish processing, crayfish processing business. Chairperson, I think we now on the Gordons Bay Harbour visit. The briefings that was done by the acting harbour master that outlined infrastructural requirements, the issue of the dredging that's required here and pumping out at Bikini Beach to enlarge the beach, the issue of CCTV cameras not being monitored, illegal parking marshals that fight with one another, and therefore, it makes it unpleasant for tourists and patrons that visit the harbour. No tires around the jetty for mooring purposes, that needs to be given attention. The leases, 5 tenants at the harbour. Of the 5, 3 were active and 2 were month to month. And the harbour management, where there is no harbour master, the acting harbour master is actually from Gansbaai and Hermanus, and geographically that means she has to drive crossing the mountains into the Cape Town coast to then do the work here as well as on the other side. This type of thing stretches personnel tremendously, and serious attention needs to be given to that matter. Users that paid 225 Rand per vehicle per year for parking, Harbour Users Committee that ensures smooth running of the harbour and other related matters, and the Yacht Club, where the department charges yacht owners for mooring space. Human resources, we spoke about. The dockmaster position is not filled, and that is open to locals to apply. On the 4th day, Chair, we went to Robben Island Museum, and we received a presentation from the Robben Island Museum Executive Management and the board and the CEO, and other members were in attendance. And arts and culture also were in attendance. We provide the background and the history of the Robben Island and Robben Island Museum here, Chair. Let me just add the word museum there. And Chairperson, geographically, this Robben Island as a geographical entity since before even the 16th century, banishment of people, from local chiefs that resisted colonialism, to the banishment of ill people and mentally ill people, both leapers as well as mentally ill people would be banished there. That was a defense line for the Second World War. Prison is well known, and the chairperson referred to Utata Mandela, who was imprisoned from the 60s right through the 90s, but quite a lot of our community members, teachers, priests, all of them saw Robben Island not only as a prison, Chair, but also Chair might recall and members might recall Robben Island as a university. And so the island has got a very, when you say multi-layered, we're not just speaking of different people from different backgrounds and for different reasons being sent there, but also the fact that it might be a negative thing to be banished there, but for political prisoners, when they came back, they were turned into individuals with the highest caliber that were respected worldwide, and that we continue to revere. And as you said correctly, Chair, on this day, 10th May, those people became presidents, ministers, and leaders that we will forever look up to. The site is a World Heritage Site since December 99. It's a marine protected area since 2020. Since 2019, and the Department Fisheries, Forestry, and Environment controls that through the relevant legislation that we already now stated through our visit to the other small harbours, that those require amendment, and regulation must be made for it to be properly applicable to these sites. But Chair, the Robben Island Museum, consisting of 5 main sites, meaning the geographical space of the island, the Nelson Mandela Gateway, the Maibuye Archives, Jetty 1 and Key 501 as well. Chair, there must just be reflection on the university and the academic space of this island. Maibuye is an archive not situated at V&A only, but also at the University of the Western Cape. I think our own researcher, Inez Stephanie, also benefited academically from this site, Chairperson, and she may later on come in and provide a bit of insight into that, as well as into add some things to this particular visit, Chairperson. She's got a close relationship to this site, personally, but also academically. The committee, in its previous engagement, and this is the concern that we always raise, Chair, around the IDT that was not being utilized fully, but instead the department and the PMTE continues to use Kuga Development Corporation and other entities and agencies like DBSA and IDC to implement projects on this island. The human capital remains a challenge, as the island operates with 6 officials out of the initial 30 that was employed, and this was reported as part of cutting costs as instituted by National Treasury over the last 20 or the last 15 years, 12 to 15 years. Infrastructural upgrade requirements, the power plant and generators, we visited some of those, and we reflected on what's required, I keep thinking of the photovoltaic farm there, and how, because of the birds being part of the marine protected area, the bird droppings that are acidic and actually need cleaning much more, and one wonders whether that is viable for a photovoltaic energy farm to operate there as the solution. There are smaller wind type of turbines that can be fixed to infrastructure on the island that might even work better. The restaurant services there, but what is important also is to think of the guest house that's used as a conferencing facility. The guest house being earmarked as part of the CAPEX project for renovation, but also the fact that I can foresee, and members also, the possibilities when it comes to tourists sleeping over, and forestry and fisheries as a department generating money out of that. We visited the Outronk, we visited some of the sites, although it was hurried. We visited the water insulation, the desalination plant, my apologies, where we were told of some of the membranes that were purchased. And I think when we got to the harbour, we saw some blue parts that arrived that I think they referred to as needing to be installed in the next 2 weeks after our visit. Structural damages and infrastructural requirements. Water is scarce on the island. With water being scarce, the alien plants that grow on the island, we could see how dry it was, and it is a fire hazard. Controlled burns are a solution, meaning you burn those things that are combustible so that they don't catch alight and go in an uncontrollable fashion, because that will obviously destroy quite a lot of the infrastructure relatively quickly. Desalination plant that takes up to 70% power capacity, so a new system that is more energy efficient needs to be installed. Wastewater treatment plant, reverse osmosis desalination plant are two of the major capital projects that are in the pipeline, and the current generator that is at that plant was decommissioned because it was not maintained. The museum moved from 600,000 to 1 million their budget for diesel spent because of a lack of maintenance on the generators, as they consume more power than they should. The island operates off the main power grid, but solar and generator systems are linked, and that's the solar that I spoke about. The problem is there's a container that charges the solar battery pack. In order for the island to go fully green, it needs to increase the battery pack capacity by 80%. It tells me that it operates on 20% now. DSAC has committed to provide, so arts and culture as a department will, sports, arts and culture will committed to the funding for that. The 5 generators installed DSAC, by DSAC through the tripartite agreement between DPWI, DSAC and RIM. The 1 megavolt generator is the only one with a big capacity, but the rest are the most critical for powering the island. These are the one with the most problems. We saw them there, and we could see that the one apparently worked while the 2 smaller ones were faulty, which increases the diesel consumption. Chair, subsection 9 is the findings. We noted the length of time that it took for the Department of Fisheries, Forestry and Environment to revise levies of vessel owners. This is where we spoke about regulatory change and possible legislative amendments. The committee said this had to be accelerated. Security, we spoke about the CCTV. This meant that CCTV systems installed, but there are no actual security staff appointed. Marine Living Resources Act unclear about the responsibility to remove sunken vessels. Further research is required to assist the minister with amendments that would improve the implementation of the law. We know that the Auditor General raised a red flag regarding month-to-month leasing in the case of the PMTE, Public Works and Infrastructure. Because this affects businesses and investors. You cannot put a proposal out for businesses to invest in your harbors. Then when they invest, you give them month-to-month leasing, and they cannot plan ahead. As a department, we've got a 5-year and an annual plan. Here you want to give people month-to-month, which means they can only have a monthly plan for business. That's not feasible. PMTE needs to give serious attention to this matter and resolve it. There's no proactive scheduled maintenance on the island, but there's no proactive scheduled maintenance by the department also on the rest of the small harbors. We focus on small harbors here. We can stretch it to the other client departments, but here we focus on small harbors, and we're saying that that issue of ad hoc maintenance is a serious problem that needs addressing. We need scheduled maintenance with scheduled budgets per client building. Chair, having considered the findings that came from the deliberations, the committee recommends that the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure facilitates engagements with the Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment regarding the amendment of the Marine Living Resources Act, so levies can be revised and the issue of responsibility of removing sunken vessels can be clarified. The revision of levies rates should be informed by factors like the size and the length of the vessel, the company size, individual corporate status. In terms of rates charged, there should also be a distinction between local and international filmmakers. My apologies, Chair. Who utilize the small harbours for commercial purposes, or it can be the same rate, but that our local Department of Sports, Arts and Culture might then consider to subsidize an amount. So the local people pay a lower amount, but it gets subsidized up to the amount for the international filmmakers who utilize small harbours for commercial purposes, such as filming. The Minister to ensure that client departments prioritize upskilling of EPWP beneficiaries. And here we are referring to the regulatory power of Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, that the EPWP beneficiaries be assisted towards professionalization in specialized required skills in the fishing industry and harbour management sector. The Minister to ensure that there is a skills development and employment component stipulated on the requests for RFQs is request for quotations, etc. But maybe it should be a different term used, or maybe I should just write it out, Chairperson, because as I read it now, it's not sufficient. But for any project, when it comes to requests for proposals or quotations of any project of DPWI and DFFE that they commission in the small harbours, that the skills development and employment component be properly spelled out so that localization is possible in terms of further education and training and further skills development, so that people who are trained here can enter the formal economy. That the Minister ensure that there's a backup of storage system for CCTV footage in all small harbours, so that the information can be accessed from archive as and when required. We cannot have those things there and something happens and then there's no evidence that can back a case up in court. That the Minister ensures that the Harbour Management Committee in Hout Bay is resuscitated as a matter of urgency. The reason why this is put there, Chairperson, is so that the community of Hout Bay can be brought on board, so they can see that they are already using the harbour as their own. Problem is that type of negative energy that they have needs to be channeled into a positive one of cooperation with authorities, rather than breaking down security systems as if they can do whatever they want. Chairperson, I must say that I have noticed that the department went back in the weeks after our visit, not only because the Minister was there, but even after the Minister, they have started engaging that community, which is a good sign, and I will keep my ears on the ground when it comes to that. That the Minister revisits the Memorandum of Understanding around harbour management between the department and DFFE departments. That the Minister ensures that all buildings constructed by the public department is compliant with the Occupational Health and Safety Act of 85 of 1993. And here we are talking about the conditions within which the harbour masters are working, including the harbour master of Hout Bay. That together with the relevant departments, the Minister should brief the joint committees of Public Works and Infrastructure, Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, and Police and Defence regarding issues on the Hout Bay Harbour, and we said before June 2023, because it is urgent. And we would then hope to also get the department into that meeting I think 10.8, Chair, the committee secretary should just take note of that and engage with Inez and myself and yourself, Chair, and the whip, so that we can then have that in the committee's program. But also that we invite the department to update us on work that they did in that harbour. 10, that the Minister ensures relations is forged between the department and the small business department to ascertain that there's adequate support for small businesses on these small harbours so they can operate in economic activities. 11, to ensure that there's a plan for planned proactive management. And we're talking here about as opposed to ad hoc. I don't think Honourable Singh is with us, but he made that point last year, Chair, very strongly, that this issue of ad hoc management is the root cause for maladministration and possible corruption. And this in relation, of course, to Small Harbours and Robben Island Museum. Revive the tripartite agreement between the DPWI, DSAC and RIM for proper management and maintenance of Robben Island Museum as well as the harbour, Murray Harbour. Forges relations and resumes engagements with the departments of tourism. It must come, forges relations and resumes engagements with the Department of Tourism must come increase revenue for the sustainability of Robben Island. I'll redraft that, Chair, it's very badly stated, but clearly what it means is engagements are required so that the revenue and the sustainable of Robben Island Museum and the geographical area is ensured. Facilitates engagement and consultations towards building a bridge. Chair, you may speak to this one from Blauberg, which is 7 kilometers away to Robben Island, so that a pipeline for power and water can be installed from the mainland. This could be done through Infrastructure South Africa as a branch of the department, and we ask that the report be considered. Chair, I must say, however, because Inez, there is a report that she sent through, and because of Robben Island and her closeness to it in terms of knowledge, that with your guidance, Chair, that Inez come in and we take note of things that she may want to suggest is part of the report prior to the members' engagement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Shoaib, but we don't have that report. We'll allow her, but can we please be sent the report, please? The one of Inez. Thank you.
Chairperson, just to correct, the report was sent via email. I saw the report via email, Chair.
Good morning, Chairperson.
I have the report, Chair.
Good morning. There was just a few notes that I sent through in terms of as additions from the report that Shoaib has just presented. The report was sent through yesterday, Chairperson, by Lwazi. So I'm not too sure what might have occurred in between. But basically, the information that I put it through just a few key select themes that I thought might be considered as part of the of this meeting, and these include the contracting, as Shoaib has mentioned, but also the issue of the appointment of appropriate staff and scheduled maintenance, and the issue of a lack, it seemed when we were at these small harbours, of a coordinated effort in terms of the security requirements on these harbours between, most specifically, the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, as well as the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment. And then, as Shoaib has also mentioned, the potential that was mentioned in terms of all these small harbors, especially for the community, most specifically in, as we saw at Gordon's Bay, for example, there was that fish flacking space, and there was also one at Hout Bay. So this section is just practically a repeat of what Shuaib has mentioned, so we can actually move to the next part of this report, to the key themes noted. Basically, as I was indicating, the issue of the contracting and leasing. The main issue that was presented by the department itself was this issue of regulating this legal contractual leases between the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure and its tenants. What it has mentioned to the committee, for example, is that Oceana on one of the small harbors had been there pre-COVID and had actually just up and left the property due to this issue of leasing not being regulated, because they could not come to an agreement. And one of the outcomes, for example, of that happening was that the place was, that whole structure, which was actually in a workable condition, then was actually vandalized to such an extent that it is now unworkable and is actually a shell of what it could have been. So these month-to-month contracts, the department has indicated they're in the process of actually trying to regularize them to ensure that they actually also take into account the changes of what they were as legacy term contracts. When we say these legacy term contracts, what was meant by that is that these contracts actually were long running, and they were some of them actually have been entered into prior to the transition, prior to 1994. So the levels at which these contracts were pitched in terms of the payments were actually in many instances sometimes nominal. And what the property management trading entity is finding is that due to these leasing being not market related, they're not making money back to actually make a profit to be able to then put money into, for example, the maintenance which is required. And I think Shuaib has, for example, mentioned the issue of at Saldanha Bay, where Sea Harvest had suggested that its payment of its lease be put in abeyance so that it is able to get a loan from a bank to actually then, for example, repair the quay side, and that is just one of this issue that Shuaib has also indicated in terms of, as there's not with these month-to-month contracts, this there slips in the inability for the department to say that, look, if our contract is entered to in this way, for example, maintenance, as Sea Harvest had indicated that they were actually entering into maintenance, that meant that the lease money that the department then received was actually less. So, but that's just an aside in terms of this. Then the National Sea Rescue, as mentioned, has got all these substations, and they are actually receiving assistance from the department in terms of facilities at a nominal rate. So that was also one of the key sort of social responsibility aspects that the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure has actually entered into. The issue here of the appointment of appropriate staff is both, it seems to be a public sector issue across the board, but most specifically here, because as Shuaib mentioned in terms of the harbour masters, that across these 12 harbours, there are only 6 harbour masters who have to actually, who are responsible for them and actually have to keep pace with going between these different spaces. So it's impossible to actually be able to manage the harbour as required. And the other issue, I think Shuaib also mentioned it, is that in many instances, these harbour masters are actually in acting positions. And this is one of the issues that was raised by the members, where the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment indicated that they have managed to have EPWP interns on these contractual bases, and that they are actually intending to have them skilled up to the level where eventually they might be able to be incorporated into these departments, but members were concerned in terms of this fulfilling of full-time tasks that are actually the purview of full-time employees. Can we go to the next? Thanks. So in terms of the scheduled maintenance, Shuaib has mentioned this as well, but the actual sort of impact of the lack of the scheduled maintenance was actually seen by members when we were at these specific spaces. In terms of the Saldanha Bay specifically, where the amount had escalated and skyrocketed to this 45 million when it had started, if I'm not mistaken, at 2.2 million, but I could be having that amount wrong. And then the issue that has been suggested is actually this lack of dedicated ring-fenced budget funds that are not available to the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure directly, but sits with these client departments. And if members will remember, with the presentation by the Department of Infrastructure, Public Works and Infrastructure, it indicated that there are many instances where they have invoiced a department, but due to other considerations, they sometimes use these funds for other projects. And because it is a government department, unlike the private sector, where if you serve with a notice, etc., you must pay, the department indicated there seems to be sometimes this belief that government can, the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure can wait because it is a government department. So that was one of the issues that was raised. Then in terms of this lack then of the paying the property management trading entity, which members have raised as a huge concern, of course, which is not in this paper, but it just comes from our previous engagements, is this huge deficit that the property management trading entity is sitting with, which is this, it's almost 3 billion, an overdraft, which the property management trading entity is working with. And therefore, in some instances, that might also be one of the things that impacts its inability to have proactive maintenance and scheduled maintenance due to the departments hanging on to the money that needs to come through to the property management trading entity, and of course with their inability where these departments are not supplying the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure with user asset management plans as required by the Act. So, and then now in terms of the security, as was highlighted, the lack of adequate and the actual required security personnel. Shuaib mentioned the tactical security that was required at Hout Bay. In some instances, it seems that this type of security needs to possibly be considered over all most of these harbors due to the information that was provided by the harbor masters, as well as the Department of Public Works, and of course the levels of vandalism, etc., and some of the criminality that was mentioned in these spaces. So, and the mere fact that when I was talking about the coordination of these security requirements, for example, is that, and that again speaks to not having the user asset management plans in place, because what this oversight has shown is that the department receives the request to put in place all these security infrastructure, the CC cameras, the lighting, etc., but that the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment is then the one that's supposed to provide the actual physical personnel to man the boom gates, the guards, etc., and to man the CCTV. But the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment indicated to the portfolio committee that funding had not been actually made available timeously to actually employ these people. So there's a disjuncture between the actual physical infrastructure that's provided and then the operationalization of that. Can we move, thanks, to the next page, please? I did mention this before, in terms of the impact of the socio-economic impact of the actual lack of securing not only the harbor, but securing the existing assets. And one of the issues that was made clear in terms of just this, the legislation that's hampering the sustainability of the small harbors in relation to the commercial harbors, for example, was when it was indicated, for example, that the docking fee, it's a flat fee, no matter the size of the boat, no matter the requirements, etc., no matter how long it stays there, it's a flat fee of 452 Rand, as opposed to in a commercial harbor, 10,000 Rand. And then, of course, the issue that was indicated earlier about the unfortunate criminality at these harbors, and with one of the harbor masters, for example, indicating that while he was there, I think this was Kalk Bay, a person had been stabbed, ran into his office. So the harbor master themselves are not secure. And as Shuaib indicated about the harbor master at Hout Bay, who had been held up in her office, if I'm not mistaken, there was an indication of at least twice or three times. So that is one of the negative impacts of not having this integrated approach with the community, which one of the members at Kalk Bay actually had suggested. The fifth generation fisher had indicated that if there is a better coordination between the community, the departments and the harbors, that there might be actually a better outcome, so that the communities are actually invested in these spaces. So in terms of Robben Island, of course, as Shuaib has indicated, there's, well, okay, just two things. I worked there between June 2001 and August 2002, and part of that was just interviewing ex-political prisoners and ex-warders, and also creating a site register of Robben Island. So I do have a personal connection to it as well, in that my uncle was a political prisoner for 17 years on Robben Island. So that's the connection that Shuaib mentioned. So this is not part of this meeting, but he did request that I indicate something about that. So just in terms of the requirements of Robben Island itself, as members saw, I think one of the things that perhaps with all these, especially sites that used to be prisons, is that I think one of the issues that one forgets is that when it was a prison, it was, and functioning as a prison, it had free labor in the form of people who were incarcerated. So with that no longer forming part of the space, the deterioration is massive, because I think one of the things maybe that was not thought of is the type of people that were actually required to actually ensure the integrity, especially the infrastructure integrity of the space. So with Robben Island, for example, the necessity for the conservation architect, the environmental manager, as was indicated with these fires that are required, that a person needs to be constantly on board, in terms of you're constantly needing to monitor the space, and the lack then of these required staff, which as Shuaib indicated, there's only 6 left of 30. And that was, I think, the minimum requirement that one of the presenters indicated to the committee. So, but one of the issues that also needs to be clarified by Robben Island Museum, for example, is that there used to be artisans on Robben Island that were linked to the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. And it seems that at a certain point, Robben Island requested that these, the department no longer actually functions on Robben Island itself. And that they were going to, as Robben Island, be the ones to actually take over the function of the facilities management aspect. But that needs to be clarified, because clearly with the presentations that was also received by the committee, where it was stated that the proactive maintenance, especially of those generators, the desalination plant, etc., it was known that it had to be done. When we received the presentation, it was shown that money had been set aside for maintenance, but only a fraction of that funding had actually been used to actually maintain these infrastructure, and that to the point where they're working at sub levels, or have actually totally broken down. Can we move down? So I've mentioned this. So can we go to the next page, please? So the security, as Shuaib also mentioned, of the perimeter of Robben Island itself, in terms of the necessity of the coast, protecting the coast. If I'm remembering correctly, if it's at one of the 2 harbors, it was either at Kalk Bay or Hout Bay, that one of the harbor masters mentioned that this stretch of abalone poaching stretches from their harbor right through to Robben Island itself. And that was one of the reasons why the thought was that maybe a wider assistance needs to be provided for these small harbors, possibly by the Navy, and sand parks was mentioned by one of the presenters on Robben Island, and along with these specialist patrols that need to be that are required. So so in terms of the observations, we just thought that when this committee was constituted in 2019, it was taking up issues that were highlighted by the previous committee in terms of the legacy report of issues that it had actually found. And with the unfortunate, interruption of the 2020 COVID, and also the busy schedule of the committee itself with legislation, this was one of the areas that many times the committee wanted to actually engage with this issue, but this was the time that it found. So one of the suggestions is that actually the departments of forestry and fisheries and environment, sports, arts and culture, public works, tourism possibly, as well as some of these defense and SAPs forms part of a meeting to engage on these the areas that have been highlighted specifically, both to ensure sustainability on the small harbors and at Robben Island, and also to address the issues of security that have been noted. Then just in terms of the key positions that are in these management spaces, one of the things that the committee learned was that, for example, one of the presenters had just been requested to step in due to the person who had long been in that position, a DDG in forestry and fisheries, had retired. And that's one of the reasons why this point is made about the loss of institutional memory and the break with continuity, because a lot of the issues that have been raised in this report were some of the issues that were actually noted in the legacy report and had not been implemented. Then just the role of Kuga and the role of other implementing agents on Robben Island needs to be clarified, and actually at the small harbors themselves. So that is one of the issues that we thought that the committee might consider, especially in terms of if there is not a proper continuity at management level within these departments, then the implementation of some of these projects then seems to fall by the wayside in many instances. And then, of course, the security, as I mentioned, remains a top priority. And the required budget, not only for the maintenance itself, but also for these skilled personnel, remains one of the issues that needs to be considered. And one of the issues as well is that perhaps there needs to be reconsideration as things have evolved. Are these the actual required personnel in these spaces, like on Robben Island, at the small harbors, to ensure that the sustainability of these spaces? And then, yeah, so that's just the issues that I thought we could add to the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ines. Though I would raise it sharply that at least a report that has to be prepared by our team. There ought to be consolidation. We're not supposed to get 2 reports from you, because some of the issues that you're raising now are a repetition in what Shuaib raised. So please try to meet each other's deadlines so that we have, I don't know what happened in the issue that I got a package. In fact, I got the report earlier on, the one on Small Harbours, and then I've got a package again, having all the information, but this one, I didn't get it. But I understand some members didn't get the entire package with the reports, as much as the report of Small Harbours was sent earlier on. Honorable members, let's appreciate the reports that we have been given by our content advisor and Ms. Inez, and then I will then note hands. There is a hand of
It's Honorable Mukhoto, yes, Chairperson.
Oh, okay. I was not aware that you are attending this meeting, Honorable Mukhoto. So that's why I'm like, hey, who is this one now? Because I saw Usiwisa earlier on, but no, you are welcome in our committee. Honorable Mukhoto, Honorable Hicklin, Honorable Van Schalkwyk, in that order, honorable members.
Honorable Mjobo.
Honorable Mjobo after Honorable Van Schalkwyk. In that order, honorable members.
Thank you, Chairperson, for affording me the opportunity to say whatever that I think has been omitted in the presentation. And one of the reasons why I've attended is because I was present in the oversight. So I had to be here and listen to the presentation or to the report. When we look at the Sea Harvest company issue, the management there stated that 60% of the damaged quays is not utilized, and then it is rendering the company useless because they are losing a lot of income that would be assisting in creating employment for the people of South Africa. He mentioned that they only utilize 40% of the quays in Hout Bay. So I think that point is very, very important. It has been omitted. And then we also, as the portfolio committee, recommended that the department must do something about the 60% of the quay that is not utilized. There must be repairs and maintenance, and that should be done as soon as possible. And timelines should be given with regard to that. And then again, when we go to Kalk Bay, there was an issue of sewer spillage that was mentioned by the management there at Kalk Bay. The management stated that they are experiencing sewer spillage whenever there is a congestion of tourists, and they have reported this issue to the municipality, to the local municipality, but to date, nothing has been done. So the Kalk Bay management was requesting us as the Department of Public Works to assist with this regard. And we promise that we will look into this matter, we will assist. And then again, when we go to Robben Island, right now, the presenter who was presenting now has just mentioned that there was money that was previously allocated for repairs and maintenance by the Department of Public Works, and only a fraction of that money has been utilized. Meaning, I'm just wondering what happened to the other fraction, because if that is the case, the issues that I'm going to raise here could not have happened. The management of Robben Island stated to us that they do not have funding for the much needed water reticulation system. And then we promised that we'll do something about the issue. It is not mentioned in the report. And then again, I did learn that in our presentation, water crisis issue was mentioned, but there is also other challenges, that correlates with the water crisis. There has been challenges with water testing, sampling, which has rendered the water in Robben Island not fit for consumption. That point has also not been mentioned in our report. And then we also suggested that that should be looked into, because people cannot, or even tourists or the employees there cannot continue consuming water that is not a fit for consumption. And then other factors that have been omitted is with regard to integrated disaster risk management. We were requested by the management as the Public Works Department to make sure that there are employees that are trained as firemen, because if we do not do anything about that, there is a possibility that, fire may erupt and there are going to be dire consequences. And then again, the management also mentioned that there are alien plants that should be removed. And we have seen these alien plants, and they are posing a threat, to the surroundings. Should anything happen, or, these alien plants catch fire, there's going to be disaster in Robben Island. And we are quiet about that. We didn't, or the presentation did not mention anything about that. And then one other thing that is of importance, it is mentioned in the presentation or in the report, just, as a matter of stating it, but the seriousness of it is not stated. The lack of continuous, effective monitoring and assessment of all the small harbors, including Robben Island, by the Department of Public Works and the other departments that are supposed to be in charge of these harbors, fisheries and environment portfolio, is very, very important. And there should be follow-up with regard to that. Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mokhoto, Honorable Hicklin. After Honorable Obo, Honorable Siwisa. Honorable Hicklin.
Thank you so much, Chair. I don't know whether I should keep my video on. I don't know how good my bandwidth is. If I start having a lag, I will switch my camera off. I would very much like to thank both Shuaib and Inez for their very, very, very comprehensive reports, and thank everybody who was on the oversight in terms of the incredible support that we had there. But I would like to make one thing very clear. The Minister of the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure was not on the oversight. The Minister of the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure has not been to a single solitary DPWI meeting and is not in this meeting today yet again. And yet, when we go on oversight, the Minister follows after us and conducts his own oversight. This is alienating to us as a committee. and I feel to an extent quite undermining, and I'd like it noted. I find it very disingenuous and very disrespectful. That being said, it then gets reflected in the press as a 500 million rand suddenly newfound budget from the minister, the new minister, new money, which in fact, as Shuaib has clarified, is not new money. It's money that was allocated 402 million in the 2019 budget and the extra money in the 2020 budget. And we need to actually put this in perspective because it is money that has not been just allocated by the new minister, fulfilling his obligations in terms of his mandate as the minister in the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. And this point really needs to be brought home. Going on to the actual visits to the small harbours, one of the things that I drew very strongly from our visits is something that is very lacking in the Department of Public Works, and it's mandated by GIAMA, the Government Immovable Asset Management Act, and that is the implementation of UAMPs and CAMPs. And if UAMPs and CAMPs were done correctly, I doubt that we would be sitting with as many of the problems that we are actually sitting with right now. Because UAMPs and CAMPs, particularly UAMPs, user asset management plans, means that the department sits and discusses with the client departments, with the clients like Sea Harvest, what their expectations were and what the department is going to do in order to meet the client expectations and what the clients are responsible to do in order to meet the department expectations. So this business of 60% or 40% of the keys not being working and Sea Harvest having to maintain it as opposed to the Department of Public Works maintaining it, it wouldn't actually have got to the point that it's got to, where in effect, Sea Harvest now holds the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure over a barrel when we are renegotiating leases. And this is the function of a CAMP and a UAMP. And now the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure is being held by the short and curlies by a client because the department didn't do its work to start off with. And it's about time the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure actually did its job. And the officials within the department have to start doing their job. That is what they are employed to do. Contracts have to be in place. Contracts that are drawn up correctly have to be in place. And we cannot work in silos. It's very evident when you go to these small harbours that management of the small harbours is not solely the responsibility of the DPWI. It's the DPWI, DFFE, Department of Defence, because all and SAPS, because the maintenance, the control of those small harbours, and this played out very, very evidently in Hout Bay. We were unsafe, particularly in Hout Bay. The harbour master is traumatized. You could see that very, very clearly in her face. This was not the first time that the harbour master was threatened by, as Honourable Mashele called them, the boys in swimming costumes. They are very, very, very far from boys in swimming costumes. These are thugs. These are thugs who are holding the entire Hout Bay harbour by the throat. It is organised crime that has the Hout Bay harbour held to ransom. They made a show of force to get us out of the way so that they could do their job. What is their job? Human trafficking, drug dealing, abalone poaching, sinking of vessels so that we can't get in to make sure that we do the job that the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure is supposed to do. They hold the entire community by the throat. And so it becomes an imperative by this portfolio committee to demand that the Department of Public Works, the Department of Defense, the Department of Police actually takes back Hout Bay Harbour. Why did a tactical force have to be called in to ensure our safety? What about the safety of the people who work in Hout Bay Harbour every single day? It's impossible that Minister of Police allows the situation to get so out of control that nobody operates in that space other than the thugs. And it goes even further. The CCTV is not monitored and operated by appropriately trained people, as Shuaib and as the report says. And in other instances, the monitoring and evaluation or the operation of the CCTV cameras stops at 4 o'clock when the offices close. Of what earthly use is that? So everybody knows that the cameras get switched off at 4 o'clock. So we'll be good until 4 o'clock. And at 4 o'clock, when the offices get closed, the CCTV gets switched off, and then it's free for all for everybody to do exactly what they like. Let's add in load shedding. Load shedding means that the cameras don't work. And when the cameras switch back on, half of them aren't operational as well. So you've got load shedding playing havoc. You've got the criminals holding society by the throat. You've got police who are too scared to walk into the harbour because they are going to get mugged themselves by the thugs that run the harbour. What chance does the harbour have of actually being functional? I got really angry on this oversight, as you can hear, because South African citizens are once again being held to ransom by thugs, and a police service not doing its job, and the DPWI not enforcing its mandate by ensuring that it works with sister departments. We have to spend our money wisely. If we have installed CCTV cameras that do not have a backup facility, it's exactly the same kind of CCTV monitoring devices that are in the press that were installed in the parliamentary villages. We can see them in Acacia Park. They're little black elements. They are on the walls of the parliamentary villages. They are neither use nor ornament because they're not attached to anything. But again, it cost millions to install them because a proper client or user asset management plan was not evaluated and done. So those monitoring devices are not attached to a police station. So that was money wasted. In terms, as you say, Shuaib, of 217 of the Constitution, where money has to be effectively and efficiently used, that is money stolen, wasted, fruitless expenditure. That is unconstitutional. We saw this right the way through these visits to the harbours. Policy and legal resources are not being employed correctly. The Marine Living Resources Act is not being implemented correctly in any of these harbours. There was so much potential in so many of the things that we saw during this oversight visit. There was so much about which to get excited, but there was also so much about which to get so terribly despondent. I loved Cork Bay, I loved Gordons Bay. I thought there was so much that we could achieve there. But again, I kept reflecting on the terror of the face of the poor harbour master at Hout Bay Harbour. My heart went out to her, that there was only one entrance into her office, that she could be trapped in that office at any point, and she had been, and held to ransom by the community, and was in such constant fear, has stayed with me to this day. And as the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, we have to make 100% certain, if we do nothing else other than ensure that that poor harbour master's life gets less traumatized, by ensuring that something is done to address the thuggery in that harbour. we will have achieved something if we can achieve addressing that. I will leave it there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Hickley. Honorable Van Schalkwyk.
I thought it's Honorable Suisa first, Chairperson, before me. But anyhow, thank you very much, Chairperson, and a very good morning. Sorry.
Apologies, Honorable Van Schalkwyk. Apologies. I had thought that. Yeah. Sorry for that. Honorable Suisa, are you ready?
Yes, Chair.
Okay,
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report that I can see that again we did a splendid job with doing oversight. But Chair, I'm getting worried. In the report, it stated that again, we had the same issue of only this time is that the people that we went to could get access to do oversight. But again, we were faced with the same issue that we were faced with the issue of the telecom towers of no executive members being present, because some of the questions that have been raised or that were observed, and in the interaction that one of the executive members should have been there to give us answers at that moment. So it seems as if it's going to become a habit that executive members don't come or officials don't come actually on oversights, because some of the issues can easily be resolved in those meetings when we ask them questions. And it's something that I think a proper follow-up needs to be done. It seems as if the undermining of the portfolio committee is escalating to another level, and it can't be ignored. And because they need to be there so that when questions are asked on site or after an oversight has been done, they should be able to respond. I don't know, maybe they did not come because we've changed the approach of actually doing oversights to say, we are first going to do oversights and then we are going to be briefed about anything, because we know the experience that we had with telecom towers. And I'm going to always make a referral to the treatment that we got from telecom towers. It's pathing away that it's going to set precedency unless it's dealt with right now. And then throughout the presentation, as I've been listening, because I couldn't be there due to other commitments, but Chair, in one of the meetings, I'm not sure, I think it's sometime last year, we were told about a maintenance plan. And when we go on oversights, we find all of these things, and we are getting other responses when we ask about the maintenance plan, which is an issue that needs also to be addressed. And I think one of the recommendations that should be put in is that the department must come and tell us how far is their maintenance plan, because the last time when I asked the response that I got was that the sister departments or whoever that they are hosting or renting buildings for, they are the ones that are supposed to do their own maintenance, but there need to be a maintenance plan in place. So how far is that plan? Maybe that should be one of the recommendations, that they must come and tell us. And I think, Chair, as I've alluded last week, I think it's about time that we must have a meeting with the minister. It can be correct that we go on oversight and then the minister decides after our oversight to go and do his own oversight. If it was done before we went there, it's something else, but not to even send a representative to come and accompany committee members to go there. And you know, the issue of maintenance is going to become a problem, because everywhere where you go, it's an issue of maintenance. And if we don't have a proper maintenance plan in place provided by the department, then we are forever going to get everywhere where we go. As Honorable Mokhoto has mentioned that when there are large floods of tourists, then there's going to be a problem of ablution, and which means that the department itself needs to come in and speak to the Department of Water and Sanitation, to speak to the local government where these harbors are, to make sure that actually the maintenance of the ablution facilities actually takes place. But Chair, the report is so proper, I can't even, there's nothing I can, the way it has been explained, I could already picture everything that happened there. And I would also like to say, you guys, I know we always do an explicit job. When you go on our website, you can only see what the report that has been presented today. And I would also like to thank my colleague to say that she also did a splendid job. And I called her because she wasn't sure whether to attend or not. And then I asked her that she must attend because she was the one who attended the oversight visit in my absence, so that if there's anything that has been left out, then she can allude to that and that it must be added to that. But other than that, Chair, the report, any person who's going to read this report is going to get the picture of what we saw and what the committee experienced. Whether you were there or not, we can always rely on our team to give us a proper report that can relate to what actually happened on the oversight. Other than that, Chair, I've got nothing more to add, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Siwisa. Honorable Sanskalvey.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good morning to Honorable Chairperson, the members, including our support team. Yet again, Chairperson, I want to echo the sentiments raised by the previous members in welcoming the excellent report that has been presented, including the analysis made by our by Inez, our researcher on issues pertaining the report. Chairperson, I just want to lift some of the issues some of the issues that's already been mentioned, and maybe some of the things not being very clear in the report, or just emphasize on that. One of my biggest concerns, Chairperson, is the lack of amendment of legislations pertaining to the sector, including the annual regulations on amendment of fees and things like that. So that really needs to be speed up and needs to be engaged on this matter with the relevant portfolio committees and departments in this regard. Then, Chairperson, we know that in the current economic conjuncture, we need to make ends meet with what we are having, but there is no urgency in terms of ways to improve revenue generation, and that's a great point of concern to me. Because if we look at the fees increase that has been done haven't been done for the past more than 10-15 years, it's a great point of concern. And the rental of buildings with regards to market-related value is also another avenue that can be explored to improve revenue generation. And I really think there needs to be a concerted effort on this issue. And then, Chairperson, in terms of funded skills development initiatives that needs to be enhanced through collaborative efforts with the higher education institutions, which will be beneficial to local communities, which will in turn lead to them being employed in into the job market in this different harbors in this sector. So that's also an area that needs to be speed up and needs to be ventured in and needs to be earmarked or needs to be prioritized. We really appreciate, Chairperson, the inputs made by the community members like Mr. Moss, taking into account, Chairperson, that many of the issues that we became aware of were raised off the record by Mr. Moss and other community members. That leads us to the issue of the harbour committees being so valuable in strengthening that area in terms of the small harbours, proclaimed and unproclaimed. So we really need to emphasize that issue of the harbour committees that needs to be revived, needs to be speeded up. There is an urgent need for security to be addressed, especially where infrastructure is in place, but not monitored by skilled staff or backup system not being in place. But also in terms of staff like the harbour mistress, who is held hostage in the past. So my proposal in this regard, Chairperson, would be that even though I've heard some of our members sharing the same issue and in terms of the criminal elements and stuff, but if we've heard also about the report that has been presented by some of the departmental officials, that there is not enough staff in the police offices who are able to assist in terms of monitoring the harbour. So my proposal in this regard would be that engagement should be made with the security cluster as a whole with regards to this issue, to engage them on remedies on how best to secure the small harbours and make sure that criminal elements are erased or minimized. Then, Chairperson, I really want to emphasize the issue, as I've emphasized it during our oversight visit, that all state institutions, all state buildings should comply in terms of occupational health and safety standards and legislation as been rolled out by the Department of Labour legislation. Because if we fail to do that, Chairperson, we've know that various incidents in the past with regards to application of occupational health and safety procedures and legislation led to issues that in turn made government be susceptible to court actions and things like that, and we really need to minimize that. There are concerted focus, Chairperson, on big vessels, but however we've seen that there is clear threat by a number of small vessels and rubber ducks, and I really feel that issue also needs to be taken care of and being zoomed in order to minimize criminal activities. And in particular, Chairperson, when I've seen in various incidents that there's an involvement of kids that's supposed to be school-going kids that's actively involved in these activities. So my concern is just that what's going to happen if this thing escalates further. So we need to have joint efforts with the communities in trying to eradicate that thing. We saw in some instances, Chairperson, like in Kalk Bay, that there are issues with regards to bulk infrastructure that were supposed to be taken care of by the local municipalities. But unfortunately, in that specific oversight visit, the municipality was not represented. So my proposal in that regard should be that there should be a continuous engagement with the local government in terms of their role that they should play in terms of bulk infrastructure and assisting the small harbors in playing their part in terms of effective rolling out of services, including the future developmental plans, which might include the usage of land of local government institutions. Overall, Chairperson, I see it as a point of concern, the fact that there are many acting people, acting positions. And what is most concerning to me is we would find that some of the issues that we've seen that's still there were raised in the legacy report from the previous committee. And the last visit was in 2017, and there's a slow movement in terms of addressing of issues. But when we ask some of the departmental officials what's happening pertaining this issue, the person would just respond to say, but I'm acting, the previous incumbent retired or resigned, and I don't know what's happening in this field. So which leads me to the question of whenever a person resign or whenever a person retire, that person should hand over a comprehensive report to the department and leave some kind of a legacy report to make sure that the person who's acting or the new incumbent is not walking in the mud, but can run with the issues and have a broad outlay or report of what's been happening and what has been done to remedy the different issues. So also in terms of our legacy report, Chairperson, I would also propose that we are also clear in terms of the different issues that needs to be addressed, but we also engage the different portfolio committees and the different departments in terms of issues that needs to be dealt with, which are not within our ambit. In moving forward. Then, Chairperson, on the pronouncement of by the Minister on this 500 million rand cash injection, if we've heard from Mr. Shuaib that this is not new money. So in the public domain, it's already out there that it seems as if it's new money, and that thing can be misinterpreted and misunderstood, which leads to people in future thinking that the money has been misrepresented and misused if it's new money. So I think we need to give a clarification in the public domain also in terms of this money, when it arrives, how it's been spent, and what is left for moving forward of this 500 million rand. And lastly, Chairperson, in terms of the proposal of the 7-kilometer bridge between, I think it's Blouberg and Robben Island, I think that's an excellent idea, and it needs to be ventured into to ensure that it's beneficial and cost effective to Robben Island, but also to the different departments. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Van Schalkwyk. Honorable Mjobo.
Good morning, honorable members. And thank you, Chairperson, for the opportunity. Covered, Chairperson. I don't want to repeat what the members said. Mine, I can say the report is the true reflection what we oh, sorry, Chairperson, is the true reflection. I move the adoption.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Mjobo. Let me also Oh, Himana. We have your apology and you are here. Honorable Marshall, welcome in the meeting.
Chair, my apologies, Chair. As I mentioned earlier on, even though there is an apology, Chair, this person came in more than once.
Okay, okay.
As you say, is welcome.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Shuaib, Honorable Marshall.
My apologies, Chair. Yes, indeed, there is an apology. I've been traveling, but I'm happy that I'm here. And like you have said, I entered in and out due to the fact that due to network where I am. Chair, I think firstly, let me appreciate the report, the manner and the spirit at which it is packaged. I think our team did excellent work in packaging it. And I'm happy that the members also interacted with it and raised the concerns they raised. Two things that probably I want to take a bite on. The first one is in relation to PMT, how they manage the leases. And as a committee, I think we've been raising this for a very long time. It must come to an end that government properties are rented for free. At certain instances, people do not pay, there is no collection. Case in point, you will not even get it clearly how much it's Sea Harvest paying. But you can see, Chair, that the issue of the evergreen contracts exists. As a committee, we must not be held at ransom and be threatened that Sea Harvest is the thing in that particular community, and outside them, life will not happen. There should be a balance between what support is the department giving to the client and what the client is paying. There should not be a situation where we are held at ransom and we find ourselves, the government finds itself sponsoring private business. And I think that cuts across. The second thing, I want to appreciate the work done by the committee. For example, the committee went to Robben Island and there was a pronouncement. I think it shows the effectiveness of what the committee does, because every time, if indeed when we raise issues, they get attended to, must behave as a committee. Now, I want to differ with some of the committee members on what they are saying. If indeed the minister made the pronouncement, the our part to me is not important. What is important is that there is a pronouncement. If there are 10 items that we're fighting for and we realize that this one item we're achieving it, let us take a dim view on it and concentrate on the remaining 9 items. So that is what I wanted to raise, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Mashele. We also appreciate the commitment that even though you are busy, you take time to come to the meeting, though you have apology. We accept that. I think we must correct in terms of who attended the meeting or not, Lwazi, when we're preparing for the minutes. Let me add my voice. It's saying my internet is unstable. I hope that you still hear me. Let me add my voice in appreciating a well-detailed written report by our team, including our committee secretary, who is not with us today, but I understand she joins and out, especially when she's not busy with her ad hoc committee work. The edition also done by Inez, it highlighted some of the issues. As I indicated, there is some repetition, highlighted and enhanced in some of the issues that were reported. I think ours as the portfolio committee is to take this and also it may form part of moving forward. But now I want to say just a few things. One, the issue of these implementing agencies appointed by the department in maintaining, especially when it comes to Robben Island. That issue of them going for DBSA or Kucha, I think it's something that we have raised it several times, that this department has an entity that has done so well with other departments, but it is not utilizing it. And I really don't understand why are they not doing that, as if they want to see this entity failing again, as it has previously done. I think this has been said several times by all the members of this portfolio committee, that why is the department not using its own entity in doing maintenance? Scheduled maintenance, I think it's something that we have said it several times, that they must do scheduled maintenance. I think one other thing that we need to check and make a follow up is the issue of those harbor committees, whether have they really activated them, because it was clear that they're not there and they're not working. And we all understand that the issue of Hout Bay, it really needs further work. Subs needs to come in. Even the municipality needs to come in that one. But other than that, I really appreciate the work that you have done, and I think for us, this issue of the commitment made by the minister, I think it's something that we need to make a follow up on it. Yes, 2022, 2023, but we now in 2023, 2024. So we need to check whether are they also committing other funds. We got a report in Saldanha Bay on the refurbishment that has been done and the amount of the budget that was utilized, and even doing a project within the stipulated time. We really appreciated that being done by the department, because we also need to appreciate when they are doing well. On that note, I don't know whether Shuaib, you need to come in, because most of the issues raised by honorable members are comments and just emphasizing on some of the points that we saw there. But the report, it's superb.
Chairperson, thank you. I don't think we need to respond, Chair. Just to say that most of the issues, as you already said, and Honorable Van Schalkwyk also said, the issues are in the report. And if members are uncertain about it, they can ask us on another date. So, you know, in case they need it for oversight material and follow-ups. But everything is in, Chair. I'm satisfied. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much on that one. Honorable Jobo raised a motion that we adopt the report as it is a true reflection of what happened. Can I get a seconder? Honorable Van Schalkwyk?
I second the motion, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Van Schalkwyk. On that note, can we go to the second item, which is the adoption of the last week's portfolio committee minutes? Lwazi, can you fly to the minutes on the second page? We also have these minutes with us, honorable members. Can we get corrections? Yes.
I just think on apologies there, if Mr. Ben can just correctly spell my surname there. On the first line. It's Seitlholo. Just remove the L.
There is an L first.
The last L. Leave leave that one there. TL. And then remove remove that one. There you go. No. See, yeah. Is it correct? Yes, it's correct.
It's correct, Honorable Silo. Thank you so much. Any other corrections, honorable members, on the minutes of our portfolio committee meeting last week? In the absence of that, honorable members, can we then?
Chairperson?
Yes.
Chairperson? Just, I think on that first page, I'm not sure whether Ms. Osman's presence was noted.
What?
Khadija, Chair, she was in the meeting. Under support staff. Was she not in the meeting?
And the sorry, Ben.
Chair,
for example.
Chairperson.
Yes.
Yes, Chair.
I was saying, Mr. S. Kumalo and Mr. S. Chomela were not part of our meeting last week. They were part of our oversight visit.
Correct, Chair.
Okay, Chair. No, I will amend, Chair.
Yeah, and put in Khadija Osman. She is always part of our meetings. Thank you so much. Any other issue, honorable members? If there are no corrections, can we then have someone move the motion that we adopt these minutes as a true reflection of what we discussed last week?
I'll move, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Hickley. Thank you, Honorable Jobo. So we then have adopted the minutes as part of our reflections last week. Honorable members, I want to raise this on the 23rd, which will be Tuesday, between the time of 4:15 to what, I don't know whether it's 18:15. We will be dealing with our budget vote debate, and not sure whether it will be in Goodwood or M46. We will get that information when it's nearer. But what is crucial, honorable members, is that all those that are part of the portfolio committee must attend physically. 2, those that will be debating, they must also attend physically. We may then have people that will join us virtually, and some will join us physical in the committee room that will be having our budget vote. So please, honorable members, we must not have someone saying that I want to debate and I'm on virtual. I attended some physical yesterday, and I could see that almost all the parties were there and they were in the venue. So let's really please ensure that we do that, and let's go there in our numbers as the portfolio committee. I've seen portfolio committee members of the two that I went in yesterday. They were all there in the meeting, and we all know that when we are debating, even members that are not part of our committee but are parties that are in parliament, they will also be debating. So we must really attend physical, honorable members, and we'll try also the portfolio committee meetings are being done physical now. So we also need to come back all those that are around the country, KZN, Mpumalanga, so that we don't have the challenge of this network that is not so stable. So we're looking forward to that. We'll inform you in time when we are going to have a portfolio committee meeting physical. But for the budget vote debate, it will be physical, it will be virtual for people that are not members of this portfolio committee. But for the members of the portfolio committee, we must be there. Thank you, honorable members. Don't forget that this is a special day in the history of South Africa, the inauguration of a democratically elected president, Mr. Nelson Mandela, the first Black president in South Africa, after 300 years of the apartheid rule. Thank you so much, honorable members. The meeting is adjourned.